The sheriff toyed with a black woman, but never imagined she was. It started with laughter, a kind that slips from the mouth of a man who thinks the world bends to his badge. Sheriff Hank Brody called it harmless teasing when he made her step out of the car in the rain, told her to dance, said he was checking for drugs in her shoes. Ava James didn't laugh. Not when the headlights of his cruiser lit her soaked blouse. Not when he snorted and called it a routine stop. She didn't say a word, but her silence wasn't fear, it was calculation. In Pine Ridge, Georgia, there are three things that don't change: the humidity, the gossip of Sheriff Hank Brody. For 15 years, Hank had ruled this town like it was his granddaddy's farm. His charm was beer-soaked, and his jokes hit hardest when no one dared to laugh too loud. The uniform fit him like a second skin, and the town fit him like a glove. He knew the dirt roads better than his own children. He knew which judges played golf with him and which barmaids would slip him free whiskey on Friday nights. What he didn't know was that Ava James wasn't just passing through. She'd arrived in Pine Ridge under the guise of simplicity, driving an old silver Camry, her briefcase hidden under a blanket in the trunk. She rented a small cabin out near Lake Meeker and told folks at the diner she was just clearing her head. The truth sat tight in her chest like a loaded revolver. Act began with that traffic stop. She was driving 5 under the limit, windows rolled down, no music. But in Pine Ridge, a black woman driving slow on Highway 14 after dark was like blood in the water. Brody's sirens flashed like a game. "Evening, miss," he said, resting one hand on the butt of his gun, the other on the side of her car. "License and registration. You from around here?" "No, sir," Ava said calmly, handing him everything he asked for. "You on your way somewhere? Or just wandering?" he asked with a grin, the kind he used on high school girls and store clerks who didn't smile fast enough. She said she was staying near the lake. That was enough. "Mind stepping out the vehicle?" he asked. No reason, no probable cause, just power. He made her stand in the ditch, checked her trunk, ran her plates, even sniffed the interior for weed smells. Then he said, "Bet you danced real good back in the day. Mind showing me some moves?" She stood there, soaked to the bone. Her eyes didn't blink. Then she said 6 words that cooled the night air. "I'll see you again, Sheriff Brody." And she did. Not at the gas station, not at the post office, but in the courthouse 3 weeks later. That morning, the town buzzed. A grand jury hearing? Unannounced? No one knew what it was about until Judge Warren Huxley stepped in, red-faced and muttering, followed by a woman in a navy blue pantsuit and heels sharp enough to pierce bone. "Who is that?" someone whispered as Ava walked past the pews. "She's the one he pulled over," another murmured. "Thought she was just some nobody." By the time she reached the front of the courtroom, there was no doubt. "My name is Ava James," she said to the room. "Federal prosecutor, Civil Rights Division." And the silence was the loudest thing Pine Ridge had ever heard. The case unfolded like a storm cloud rolling over dry land. Ava had come undercover, tipped off by a string of similar complaints. Black residents pulled over, mocked, searched without cause. Some claimed harassment, others humiliation, but no one had proof until now. She'd recorded everything. Her dash cam, her phone, his words, the way his flashlight lingered too long on her chest. The jokes, the threats veiled as Southern hospitality. Brody's lawyers tried to spin it, called it miscommunication, claimed she didn't act scared, so he thought it was mutual. But the videos didn't lie. Neither did the women and men who came forward, emboldened by Ava's presence. Old Miss Carolyn, 74, told the court how Brody pulled her grandson out of his car last year, knee on his back, shouting "boy" every other word. Jamal Turner, a local mechanic, described being stopped 3 times in 1 month, once for having a tree-shaped air freshener that obstructed the view. Ava sat quietly, listening, taking notes, her eyes on Brody the whole time. He wouldn't meet them. By the end of Act 1, the town that once praised Brody's tough love was starting to sweat. Because love doesn't make you unzip your pants on a roadside while your children scream in the back seat. Love doesn't ask you to twerk for freedom. The courtroom was packed. The news had reached Atlanta. A CNN van parked beside the church. The mayor started ducking calls. Brody's wife stopped showing up in public. Still, the sheriff showed up in uniform every day, boots shined, badge polished. As if performance could rewind time. Act 2 wasn't about the court. It was about the town unraveling. People stopped saying hello at the diner. Black residents stopped walking alone. White residents argued at gas pumps. Facebook groups exploded with rage, half calling Ava a hero, half calling her a race-baiting outsider. Someone spray-painted "Go home" on her cabin. The next day, she installed cameras. But Ava didn't flinch. She filed 2 more subpoenas. She got court orders to examine body cam footage. She requested records of every stop Brody made in the past 5 years. That's when she found something no one expected. A file, buried under a false name. A stop from 2 years ago. Young woman, 18. No charges filed. But Ava tracked her down. Her name was Nina Wallace. She now lived in Atlanta. When Ava called, Nina cried. Said she thought she'd imagined it. That maybe it was her fault. That the sheriff had pulled her out of her prom date's car, made her strip in the woods to check for meth. The memory made Ava's chest seize. She brought Nina to court, and the town cracked wide open. More victims stepped forward. More names. More tears. By the end of the second act, Sheriff Hank Brody wasn't just a man with bad jokes. He was a predator with a badge. And Ava James? She wasn't just a visitor. She was a reckoning. The night before the trial was set to begin, Sheriff Hank Brody sat alone in his den, staring at a bottle of wild turkey that he hadn't touched in 2 years. His lawyer had told him to settle. "Plead down, Hank," he'd said. "Take retirement. Let go quiet." But Brody wasn't wired that way. He had built Pine Ridge in his image, or so he thought. The uniforms, the parades, the sheriff's booth at the county fair. His face was on every wall, every badge, every fear. Now, his world was crumbling, and the woman who started it all hadn't even raised her voice. Brody's wife had left, packed a suitcase the day Ava brought Nina Wallace into court. Their son had called from college, saying he was dropping his last name for good. And yet Brody still believed deep down that he'd walk free. "Pine Ridge needs me," he muttered to himself, watching old video reels from the last town parade. He saw himself on a float, waving, people cheering. And then, in a blink, Ava's face burned through the screen like fire. Court reconvened at 9 a.m. on the dot. Ava wore the same navy blue suit. She didn't need wardrobe changes to prove her point. Her presence did the heavy lifting. The prosecution had 17 statements. For victims willing to testify, 1 damning audio recording of Brody laughing about a traffic stop to show, a quote that would go viral before the week was over. But none of it compared to what happened on the 4th day. Because that's when Ava called herself to the stand. Whispers flew across the courtroom. Lawyers shifted in their chairs. Judge Huxley raised an eyebrow, but allowed it. Ava stood, took the oath, and sat down across from the defense. "I wasn't just investigating this department," she said. "I was watching how this town reacts when power goes unchecked." She told them about every meeting, every fake story she'd planted in the diner to test if people would repeat it. She showed them photos of Brody shaking hands with city council members who swore they hadn't seen him in weeks. She read out text messages leaked anonymously from deputies afraid to speak publicly. In them, Brody used the N-word, called Ava a pretty little monkey in heels, said he'd put her in cuffs and teach her Southern manners. People gasped. Some stood. Others walked out. Still, Ava continued. Calm, controlled, devastating. The defense fumbled. They tried to object, tried to paint her as manipulative, an outsider, a provocateur. But Ava wasn't just any lawyer. She was the granddaughter of civil rights activists in Selma. Her mother had marched on Bloody Sunday. Her father lost an eye in a prison protest in '78. This wasn't a case for her. This was bloodline. "I didn't come to Pine Ridge for revenge," she said in her closing words that day. "I came for reckoning. Because what happens here echoes everywhere." By the end of the second week, the jury had heard it all, and they were scared. Not just of Brody, but of themselves. Their silence, their complicity, their laughter at jokes that were never funny. On the morning of the verdict, Ava stood outside the courthouse. Reporters flooded her. Microphones thrust forward. "Do you think justice will be served today?" one asked. She looked into the crowd and said, "Justice isn't a verdict. It's a mirror." Inside, Sheriff Hank Brody sat in his finest uniform, badge glinting. But he was a shadow of the man who once swaggered through bar doors with a wink and a curse. His hands trembled. His wife's seat was empty. His legacy already shredded. The jury filed in. Guilty. On all charges. Abuse of power. Harassment. Racial discrimination. Obstruction of justice. And for one count assault with intent to degrade you would serve prison time. The courtroom erupted. Gasps. Cries. Even some applause, quickly silenced by the judge's gavel. Ava didn't smile. She simply closed her briefcase and walked out into the Georgia sun. Act 3 was quieter, but no less powerful. Brody's arrest made national headlines. Pine Ridge became a symbol overnight not of shame, but of transformation. The governor sent in oversight teams. The police department was restructured. Every officer forced into retraining. Some quit. Some stayed. A few apologized publicly. Ava didn't stay for the reforms. That wasn't her job. But before she left, she visited Nina Wallace one last time. They sat on a park bench in Atlanta, watching children chase bubbles in the wind. "I still feel him sometimes," Nina said softly. "Like in my ribs, in my spine. The memory doesn't leave." Ava nodded. "It won't," she said. "But now it's yours to name, not his." Nina looked at her, tears held in check. "Why do you do it? Go into places like that. Let them hurt you just to prove they're hurting others." Ava thought for a moment. Because if someone doesn't knock the mask off, the monster just keeps smiling. 3 weeks later, a new sheriff was sworn in. A black woman, former state trooper. She wore her hair in braids and her badge on her heart. In her first speech, she said, "Protecting this town means protecting everyone in it. And that starts with truth." The people clapped, some reluctantly, others with relief. Change had come not by storm, but by steady, righteous fire. As for Ava, she went on to another town, another badge, another courtroom. Her name whispered like a warning in precincts across the South. But in Pine Ridge, it was remembered as something else. Hope.